Namaskar. It's a great pleasure to be here. Honorable Finance Minister, thank you very much for receiving me here, and to ASSOCHAM, congratulations for their 100th anniversary. In a world where growth is slowing down, and in a world where India is facing slowdown in growth, I want to start off by celebrating India's growth path. 160 million people lifted out of poverty in the last decade is a historical figure. Today's global numbers of poverty declining is a result of India's participation and India's contribution. And that does not happen without the type of growth which is diversified, resilient, and one that has gone through an inflection point of low growth path in the past and shifting to a high growth path of today. In today's world, we have to ask ourselves the question, what will India's growth model look like for the future? And I think I'd like to try and answer that with a few points. But first I want to begin by talking about why I believe the foundation is strong. And unlike the usual World Bank presentation, where we look at somewhere between monetary and fiscal policy, I want to ground my points in the reality of what I see in India today. Let me begin by pointing out some amazing numbers. India has the world's largest self-help groups of women. The ones that we in the World Bank are associated with in Government of India's program, 80 million women belong to self-help groups that have leveraged over the last decade over $40 billion. And their non-performing loan figure is less than 1%. If I were to invest, I would certainly invest in the women of India, because that is where the growth rate will come from. But India's foundation goes even further. India has today the world's largest early childhood program. For a long time, we believed that human capital came from investing in primary school, in secondary school, indeed in tertiary school. Today we know the first 1,000 days of a child makes it or breaks it in terms of human capital. So investing in the mother in prenatal and investing in the mother and child in the first 1,000 days is fundamental. And India has the world's largest program of Anganwadis that and coming from Bangladesh, and I guarantee you in Bangladesh we have done some things that are quite amazing and that India watches, this has surprised me. And this is the greatest foundation for human capital, which I believe is the future of India's growth model. The third example I would give is the world's largest tuberculosis eradication program. What India has done is that it has not chosen to go the usual public sector model of tuberculosis eradication. It has created a partnership with private health clinics and private providers. Today we know that close to 50% of low-income households are supported by private health providers. Government of India has one of the most amazing health TB eradication program supported by the pilots that have been done by Gates Foundation and our investment. And I think that this program will be another huge component of the human capital, which is the foundation of the future. But investment in women and health is only the first part of India's growth model. The other comes from very innovative infrastructure, and I want to give three quick examples. In Assam, a state divided by the mighty Brahmaputra, one of the most amazing stories is daily thousands and thousands of people cross the Brahmaputra from one side to the other in search of jobs, healthcare, services. This whole crossing has really been one of informal service providers. Today, Assam has made a commitment. It is actually going to invest in modernizing its jetty system, separating the jetty system into a corporatized system, creating a policy framework that will actually support small and medium enterprise and protect the the citizens as they cross the river. I believe that it'll be one of the biggest growth centers for Assam and indeed for that part of the world. I'll give you another example. Himachal Pradesh in Shimla. A couple of years ago, you saw on television, you may have felt it directly, of the water crisis that Himachal and Shimla faced. And Himachal wanted to create a new water source for Shimla, but they went one step further. They recognized that a new water source into a leaking bucket does not solve the problem of water. So instead, Shimla created one of the first decentralized, corporatized water utilities in India. And that is now, for the last 2 years, delivering increasing number of hours of water, and their objective is to deliver 24/7 water. It's quite a phenomenal system of institutional change, which I believe outlines what the future growth of India will be. If I take these examples of what is happening in India today, I would like to point to 4 key areas which I believe will be the foundation of India's own growth model. First, in the areas of transport, water, and electricity, there is a tremendous scope to move from agencies and departments into commercialized corporate utilities that give 24/7 electricity, that give 24/7 water, and that give urban transport where it's not faced with congestion, but mobility for all citizens in the urban sector. This shift of moving away from departments and agencies into corporatized delivery models. And by corporatized, I mean delivery of commercial entities that can go to the capital market, borrow, and deliver services. The world's largest water company is a public sector company, Sabesp in Brazil. It raises its money in the US capital market. It is my belief that India is at the cusp of a revolution of completely creating corporatized systems of delivery. Note, I'm not talking about public-private partnership. That comes once you create that corporatized delivery. I'm talking about corporate bodies like Power Grid. I'm talking about Concor that India has delivered in the past. These can be translated into corporatized delivery system in today's India. The second element of what I would think is the future of India is how India will deal with its urban sector. We know that JNNURM, Amrut, Smart Cities, has created a flow of funding into the urban sector, which has lifted investments in the urban sector. The future of India will truly be on the growth rates that urban India delivers. But there is a question that India faces. What is India's management model of the urban sector? What will and how will India manage its cities and towns? This question is still unanswered. Around the world, we see 2 major models. One, a complete mayor-led political decentralization model of urban management. The other is state-appointed city managers running urban centers. India is somewhere in the middle. Its cities are run by vertical line agencies along with municipal elected leaders. So it's a hybrid model. In some ways, it's a halfway house. India has to transcend from that halfway house and seek a model of its own growth path of how urban India will be managed. I believe that the $5 trillion economy depends on the urban management model that India will create. The third point that I like to make is something that I learned from the young civil servants of India. The Honorable Prime Minister did something very bold. He brought all of the civil service, the young entrants of the civil service in Kevadia, and launched a challenge to them to rethink how they would work for the future of India. And in one session, a group of these young civil servants got together to speak about the future of India's agriculture. And it was fascinating. These young men and women never used the word food security, never used the word minimum price for food, never used the word public distribution. Instead, what they said, farmers are the future private sector backbone of India, one. Two, they said, we are going to see a diversified agricultural system that respects the natural base of India, including water. And we will see a marketing arrangement led by the private sector where millions of farmers are able to produce and market as they choose. That's an extraordinary vision coming from young civil servants of India, and this is exactly what the Prime Minister had challenged them to think. I believe there's a transition in agriculture that India needs to boldly move towards, and it was enunciated very well by these young men and women. And finally, I want to talk about the ease of doing business. The Prime Minister talked about India's incredible story. It actually is the only country of this size that has moved from a rank of 142 to 63. This jump in 3 years is actually historical in the accounts of what we have documented at the World Bank. But I want to talk about something else that India has done. India has led one of the most impressive subnational ease of doing business in order to create competition between states, to the point that when we presented this at the World Bank, countries like Russia, China, Indonesia asked us to present India's storyline of subnational ease of doing business. But the subnational ease of doing business, I think, reveals probably one of the most important foundations of India's future growth. The future of India lies in the states of India. And enabling the states of India to be both cooperative and competitive, I think, is one of the foundations of a $5 trillion economy. And here there's something that is dramatically needed, which I know Government of India is looking into. It's one, how do you transit in a federal system from schemes to systems? India has some of the world's most amazing schemes that we know, and I mentioned some of them in TB, in self-help groups of women, early childhood. But a vibrant federalism that has to deliver a $5 trillion, if not more, needs to transit from schemes to a fiscal transfer system, which is, in effect, a system. India is doing that through DBT. India is doing that through a social protection system, but it needs to run across services. That is a challenge that I hope the 15th Finance Commission will take. Ladies and gentlemen, let me end with one myth, or breaking one myth. There is a sense that India has dominated the world of services and it may have missed the train when it comes to manufacturing. Ladies and gentlemen, and in particular ASSOCHAM, this is a myth. India can achieve as much growth in manufacturing as it has done in services. There's a global value chain out there that small and medium enterprises can grab, and that global chain is a manufacturing chain. And India is just at the beginning of taking that leap. But it is a leap that will require small and medium enterprises to be given an ecosystem of capacity support, access to markets, and indeed access to finance. It is my belief, and you can take it from a Bangladeshi that has seen garment industry grow in his own country from nothing to now 7% of our GDP. India is on the verge of being able to achieve the global value chain. But you have to believe that. And especially you as ASSOCHAM, you have to believe that that is something that you can join. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of India is very, very bright. It is more than $5 trillion. Thank you.